performing my ritual of congratulating myself for actually hitting the record button. So far, I have not failed to do this.
It's always good to keep your goals, within a reachable regime.
Yeah, yeah. Because honestly, I would just feel bad because some of these have gone for like a couple hours, and I would just be like, "Yeah, so about that, you know."
I probably won't be able to last a couple of hours. We have a house guest.
Oh shit. Okay. Well,
Yeah, so
I will.
but an hour certainly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good because my we've already been talking, and my battery is keeping an eye on it. So,
You don't just have something plugged in.
normally I would, but like I just in this part of the room, I don't have access. Even my lights are on batteries,
Oh
so
my God.
all the power is being eaten by that. So, welcome to episode whatever. I don't know what the order is going to be, so here we are.
Let me just click on the OK so that I acknowledge that I'm being recorded.
Uh, and this is Peter Watts. Peter Watts came into my life like a wrecking ball. Many years ago, I was sitting in a kitchen with somebody who was talking, brought up this book Blindsight, and it was like, yeah, it's this kind of first contact story and blah blah blah. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And so I picked it up and I went and just kind of bought it online because you can do that because you live in the future. And uh, and it was an incredible experience for me reading this book because um, I am a huge fan of things that feel grounded in reality. And as I was reading it, I would sit there and every few pages I would have to stop and I would go and look up whatever the thing was that he was talking about. And sure enough, it was a real thing and just extrapolated 100 years in the future. And I loved that. I love it when it just feels like the thing that you're the fiction or whatever that you're interacting with is part of everything because it's just and when there's so much more to learn in addition to that, which is cool. Thankfully, it wasn't so much where you'll read something that's like really involved and you're just like, wow, that's requires an entire other skill set to understand. The other cool thing about Blindsight is that it uh, it isn't space opera. I don't do space opera well. I tend to like one or two people dealing with a very big problem, as opposed to all these characters doing all this stuff. And that's very much what this is about. It was also one of the few times that I've read a book that actually had a character that I really related to, um, which was pretty neat as well. So Peter Watts has done many, many, many things. And I will have him tell you about that.
Oh, really? This is it.
Well, this is the beginning part.
Okay. I now have to like tell everybody everything I've done.
Well, no, but you can. Well, maybe not. Maybe let's start at the beginning now. It will come out naturally. Uh,
Okay.
what was for you the first thing as a kid that really got into your head and was like, I need to learn everything about this. I need to, and when you're a kid, having anything that does that sticks with you for more than 2 weeks is pretty remarkable. So,
Yeah, I didn't know what an aquarium was when I was 5 years old. Um, I thought I knew what an aquarium was. I lived in Calgary. Um, and there was this this giant brewery downtown that I guess for some kind of reasons of cultural contributions had an aquarium. First floor was an aquarium, and the second floor was a museum of Albertan history, which showed a bunch of indigenous people dancing around a pole with spikes through their nipples. It was a different time. Um, Hell, in Calgary, it's probably still there. Um, but the aquarium was on the first floor, and it was this wonderful sort of greenish, bluish, dimly lit grotto. And there was an octopus, and there were like tanks with sharks, and it was like a layer, right? And that's what I thought an aquarium was. And I was walking home from kindergarten one day with a friend who mentioned that he had an aquarium and did I want to see it? And I was like, this is awesome. I've seen the outside of your house and I don't think it's big enough to hold an aquarium. So he takes me downstairs and he shows me this like 10-gallon tank with some guppies and a couple of mollies and some swordtails, except he pronounced them sword tails because it's kind of weird when you think about it because we were in kindergarten. Now, this is the first time I've thought of this, but like he couldn't spell. So how did he know to call them, to mispronounce them sword tails? Anyway, so I'm looking at this 10-gallon aquarium, and by rights, I should have been really, really disappointed. I should have been crushed because this is like a pathetic echo of, a caricature. This is a Gary Larson
Part
sketch
of
next
me
to the Mona
knowing
Lisa.
you, expecting you to have just turned to him and go, "Oh, please."
But what I actually felt instead was, holy shit, anyone can have an aquarium. And I went home and basically demanded an aquarium for my birthday or Christmas, whichever came first. Um, and that was the moment on some level, though I did not know the term, I decided to become a marine biologist. I just want to learn everything about fish. I just fanatically to the point where my mother would like have to rein me in whenever we met anybody new who might not want to know as much about fish as me, right? Um, so yeah, that was pretty. I mean, that has to be it. It's stuck in my mind since 1964, 1965. Um, I don't remember the guy's name, but I remember that tank. And I'll take the memory of that tank to my deathbed. Although, of course, now I'm not a marine biologist anymore, so it might
Still
seem kind
relevant.
of irrelevant, but I was a marine biologist for a while, so yeah.
So let's get to that. So you went through school, and then you went to school for marine biology. And did you have any specific like this is the version of marine biology that I want to get into, or was it just a just hit me? Let's do.
It was fish for the longest time. Um, then around, I guess, grade nine, I guess I was 13, maybe 14. Read a book by Farley Mowat, a Canadian author called Farley Mowat, called A Whale for the Killing. And in hindsight, there was a lot of bullshit in it about whales. He didn't really know anything about whales. But it was basically about a finback whale that got trapped in a Newfoundland harbor and how the local Newfoundlanders just went to fucking town on it. They basically shot at it, ran over it with propellers, like just did anything they. And eventually, it died, and they dragged it away, right? But it was it was a story that, disingenuously or not, imparted in me a real kind of respect and an affinity for marine mammals. So at that point, I found my specialty. Like I say, I was like grade 9 or 10 or something around that point. And around the same time, I read John Brunner's The Sheep Look Up. And so it was like, I'm going to be in the marine mammals, and holy shit, we've got to do something to protect the environment. So, yeah, that was where my sort of initial awestruck gee whiz focus on the fact that anyone could have an aquarium kind of focused down to creatures that you could never really fit into an aquarium, despite the Vancouver Aquarium and the Niagara Falls Marine Land and Game Park and every other fucking whale prison on the planet has tried to do, but you can't really do it.
Apparently in Atlanta, they have whale sharks in theirs that you can actually go swim with. Yep.
I would like to see that. I mean, whale sharks are plankton feeders. How do they generate the biomass to feed something like that?
Oh,
How
well,
big is the tank?
I don't know, but I do know Nathan, my drummer, his wife did it, went swimming with them. And I mean, obviously, it must be stable enough that it's been a regular thing for quite some time. So if they're not like just swapping out whale sharks every so often.
Or they have like a giant animatronic whale shark.
Yeah, nobody
I
knows.
mean, those things are so huge, you could build something out of clockwork and still fit the gears in.
But yeah, so
Wow.
yeah,
I'll have to check that out.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I know nothing about the mechanics of it, but I bet I could find a path to find somebody who worked there and see if I could talk to him about it because I would be curious about how that all stays functioning. Kind of,
Yeah, put them
kind
on
of,
your podcast. I'd be there.
yeah. Um, so you went to school for this, and then ended up studying seals, right? Sea lions.
The first thing I studied was porpoises.
Mhm.
Kind of a stupid dolphin, right?
Right. Is that
Um,
the difference?
Sorry?
Is that the difference? That they're just dumb? What's the
No,
difference?
well, I mean, there's a lot of morphological differences. Dolphins have cone-shaped teeth. Porpoises have spade-shaped teeth. Dolphins have falcate dorsal fins. Porpoises have triangular dorsal fins. Um, there are habitat differences. Dolphins tend to range more widely. Porpoises tend to be more near shore. Um, but yeah, I mean, they're both small odontocete cetaceans, right? So I did my master's in the Bay of Fundy and thereabouts um, on distributional ecology of harbor porpoises. Then I went on to do the harbor seal stuff was my PhD. Yeah, I went out to the West Coast because Michael Bigg was the guy who had figured out that you've got these different communities of killer whales and they have distinct signature whistles. And he could actually identify them by ear. I mean, he used sonograms and so on, but he could also just kind of listen to one of them whistling and know not only which pod it came from, but which individual whale it was. So I mean, one of the things I was kind of ashamed to admit and didn't before was that, back when I was discovering Farley Mowat and I was also getting into John Lilly and the, have your sex pot girlfriend live up to her waist in water for 3 months in a Navy funded experiment to try and communicate with dolphins while you're taking LSD and ketamine. Um, he kind of went off the rails. But there was a period where I was like, okay, I'm going to be the first guy to talk to dolphins in their own language because I was convinced that they had their own digital language. It turns out it's all bullshit. But I went through that phase too. Um, but I had enough of that dolphin big brain sense of wonder to really sort of glom onto the idea of working with killer whales. But by the time I got out there, all the killer whale slots were taken, so I had to take the trash fish that were left, and that was harbor seals.
So I'm writing down this dolphin language bullshit thing because I want to come back to it. So harbor seals.
Yeah. So I mean, the way I described it was reincarnating max headroom in the body of a harbor seal, which is probably not anything any of your viewers will even understand because max
Well,
headroom is so
you're all
80.
very familiar with Max Headroom, or at least all the people. And oh, look at this. You know,
Yeah, very. Yeah, you're
so
blank
like all
red,
of
just
my
what you
people,
are.
and a lot of this will be my people watching this.
So it's
All know that.
basically I basically was building a simulation model to predict harbor seal behavior. And I mean, it was simple. It was a simple enough task because most, couldn't do it with fish, can't do it with most mammals because we generate our own body heat, we're essentially decoupled from the thermal environment. You take a lizard, you can measure the stats on the lizard and you can measure the environmental stats and you can figure out how high it'll be on a fence post
Right.
on the given the time of day because it has to maintain some kind of thermal neutrality. Well, seals are kind of the same way because they've got to balance two different environments, and water has something like 200 times the heat conductivity of maybe only 20. Anyhow, it's a lot more. Um, the heat conductivity of like water just sucks the heat out of you.
Mhm.
So you got to develop a thick layer of blubber. But seals, being the dumb, indecisive creatures that they are, also spend time on land. And all that blubber then acts as an insulating coat that causes them to overheat. And they don't sweat.
Mhm.
They get little mohawks when you stick them in microwave ovens. They're because the brains tend to radiate more heat than everything else. So the fur there dries fastest. Um, so
I think
they were kind of an ideal if you wanted to do a simulation model, predicting when seals would haul out and when they would
Mhm.
They would go to water. A lot of that has to kind of walk in this knife's edge. Every time they come up with an adaptation that serves them well in one environment, it fucks them over in the other. So they got this really sort of narrow window of environmental tolerances. And when things get too hot, they all go into the water. In the water, there's like an 85% chance, at least that was my back of the envelope calculation at the time, that they would get eaten by a shark or a killer whale before they reached reproductive age. So there's reasons for them to want to haul out because it's safe from predators. But of course, they got to forage in there. So that was basically it. I got a paper out on lycanthropy in harbor seals because they were, turned out they're a lot more active on full moons.
Mhm.
And so I did a note on that. So it was fun. It was a lot of I got a bunch of grad student awards and scholarships and stuff for it because it was innovative. This is back in the days when all your computer monitors had amber screens, and if you had like a 10 megabyte hard drive, you were God.
Mhm.
So I would set the simulation model running, and I would go to bed. I would wake up the next morning, and hopefully it wouldn't have crashed overnight, sort of thing. But yeah, that's what I did. Then I came back and worked at I did a postdoc at the University of Guelph, which is where I had done my BSc and my master's. And the great thing about that was when I first went to Guelph, I tried to get a vasectomy, and they wouldn't let me. They wouldn't give me one. I was like too young. You might want to have kids. They literally said to me, "Come back in 10 years." And 10 years later, I was back in Guelph, except I was teaching and doing research instead of as a student. And I looked up exactly the same clinic. And um, and unfortunately, the person who had told me to come back in 10 years was in jail for sexually assaulting one of his patients when they were under anesthesia or
Oh,
something.
well, and
But so it was kind of a Pyrrhic victory, but I got the vasectomy anyway.
right.
So it was the same
That's
place.
weird because I mean you can get them reversed. So I mean, but like
Yeah.
it's funny. Like I've known people, women who are in their 30s who are trying to get their tubes tied and shit, and they're like, no, you can't do that. You might still want to do it. And they're like, no, I know I don't. It's crazy to me that anybody is saying, well, your decision about your body is not up to you.
Yeah, well, the you can get the piping reconnected easily enough.
Mhm.
The problem is, as I understand it, and maybe again, this is like dating back to the 80s, so who knows, science may have marched on. But my understanding at the time was that it was easy enough to reconnect the tubes. In the meantime, you're still producing sperm,
Right.
but that sperm isn't going into the semen or the tubules and mixing it up with the semen, right? It's just sort of diffusing out into the scrotal sac and hence into the rest of the body, where, wonder of wonders, your immune system says, "What the fuck are you? I'm gonna come up with something that
Quit
fights
trying
you."
to impregnate me.
So the body develops kind of an asymptomatic immune response to the sperm, so that the sperm, even when you get the tubes back together, the sperm, when they get shot out, are so clumped down with antibodies
Uh,
that they can't swim. So you have sperm with no motility. This is what I understood at the time.
mm,
And so apparently that happened in about 40% of the cases of people who wanted to get reconnected. The surgery was trivial, but they were essentially sterile afterwards.
right,
So I
right,
can see people saying, yeah, it's not, it's a potentially irreversible situation. But
right.
still, I would say people have the right to make their own mistakes, but look what happened with Trump, right? Like maybe people don't have the right to make those kinds of
Making a mistake.
mistakes. We'll find out if
Individuals have the right to make their mistakes. A whole big group of people making that mistake. Yeah. But yeah, I
yeah.
just have this picture of the white cells, floating around, just big old dudes floating around. Red cells, and the sperm are all just like, hey, how you doing? When I had a hernia a while back, and they went in and did the thing, and apparently while I was under, I kept being like, "While you guys are down there, can you just go ahead and take care of that? Like just tie it all up. We're good."
Did they do that? They were
No,
cool with that?
they didn't. Although the other fun one, I didn't know about this until about 6 months after the fact. Donna was telling me about how when I went and had the colonoscopy, and as I was coming out, I turned to them and said, "Did you find my Darth Vader figure?"
Well, better than a squirrel, I suppose.
So, so, well, okay, you've had an incredibly illustrious career, but now I really want to know about the dolphin thing. So, were you able to establish that is there just no consistency between pods or?
Oh no, no, like my again, my the only dolphin-like creature I worked on
Mhm.
was the harbor porpoise.
Mhm.
Okay. And all I was doing again was using multilinear regression to essentially say, okay, here are the environmental variables. This is how many porpoises you will see in this area per square kilometer under these environmental conditions. So I wasn't even looking at that at
Mhm.
all. Mike Big was on my he was on my committee, and he was a really nice guy. They've actually named a national marine park after him. And in fact, I think they might have renamed transient whales Big's killer whales now in his honor. He died when I was actually doing my degree. He died of, no, he died shortly after. No, it was during because I dedicated the thesis to his memory. He had leukemia. But he was a great guy. He was just happy to do the science, and he was a government scientist. So, of course, there was all the bureaucratic bullshit. And he made sure that, the bureaucratic bullshit, the layers of bureaucracy, sheltered him from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, which really didn't give a shit about anything except fish stocks and
Mhm.
yields and how high they could push the quotas so that they could get, reelected. I mean, civil servants don't have to worry about that, but they take their marching order from the Minister of Fisheries. But he just did his thing. And he was kind of a legend. And he was a really, really nice guy. One of the few academics that I had to deal with at UBC who didn't have his head so far up his own ass, he was Frenching his own tonsils. And yeah, the world's a lot poorer without him.
Mhm. That sucks.
Yeah. Anyhow, he was the one that did all the killer whale stuff.
Mhm.
And yeah, I was doing, pure pinnipeds. So yeah, the vocalizations. I mean, dolphins are, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're very smart.
Right, right.
And, they may have a language if, for all we know, but there is a difference between a signature whistle
Mhm.
um, and syntax and grammar.
Mhm.
They make very, very complex vocalizations. They echolocate. To
Mhm.
some extent, language would be redundant for them because, like questions like, how are you feeling?
Right.
Aren't get down from there, doofus. Questions like, how are you feeling? Probably redundant when you can just basically do an ultrasound of the person and sort of get everything from their blood pressure to their respiratory rate to their body temperature, right? Just like these guys have extremely sophisticated sonic senses. Um, but it's with years of trying. John Lilly, who was a medical doctor and who was convinced that dolphins had their own sophisticated digital language, never proved anything. Um, and when it comes right down to it, who cares? You don't have to, the fact that something doesn't have a language doesn't or shouldn't give you carte blanche to like fuck it over
No, of course
or
not.
put mine tailings in its environment or let it get caught in tuna nets or if you're in the Faroe Islands or the Iceland or the Japanese, just butcher the hell out of them.
Right.
Um,
No, no, of course. I think the
it, it
idea
shouldn't
of,
it shouldn't hinge on whether or not they have a digital language.
right,
And they're certainly smart, but
even if
so,
that doesn't
so are
matter,
these
it's
guys. So are
a good
these guys.
reason
I
to wipe
mean,
out
I
any.
think we I think we tend to radically underestimate the intelligence of everything other than ourselves.
Yeah,
And I
well,
think we tend to overrate our own smarts.
that too. Yeah, well, I mean, we've got the whole survival bias on our side, I guess, with that one. we're here, therefore we're intelligent. But do you
Yeah,
know
I
about
don't.
you must about the killer whale hats, the dead fish hats that they've been doing?
No, I haven't heard.
Okay, so apparently about 25 years ago, um, or maybe it was a dead seal or something. They spotted one pod, one whale that was wearing a dead seal on its head,
Right, right.
and then it caught on, and others were doing it too, and then it disappeared. And now it's back after 25 years. They're now spotting the dead seal hats back on the killer whales.
Who knows? Jethro Tull is back in style now.
Are they? I mean,
Yeah. Well, I mean, they've come out with 3 albums in the past 3 years.
hmm.
They're not the Tull of old. Um, but things go around.
I was actually
Time is
thinking
a
I need to
cycle.
about the new stuff out and see what it has become.
Some of it's pretty good. Some of it's a bit snoozy. Of course, Ian Anderson now has a vocal range of 4 notes.
Right. Well,
So he can't really, he's got more of a Mark Knopfler kind of thing going on with his vocals. Um, but the fact that a 78-year-old is still producing music that in a lot of cases still really rocks.
right.
Um, if it's not another Passion Player Songs from the Wood or Minstrel in the Gallery, he did that stuff. He's doing milder stuff now, but some of the songs still really have it.
That's cool. Yeah, Aqualung was one of my. I mean that hit me really hard when I got it when I was a kid, and it's something I still think about a lot, just from a producer point of view, because I love the little mini songs on it that just kind of come in, do their thing, get out. They're like a minute and a half long or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Slipstream and Wondering Again.
Putting aloud, yeah.
Sure, Wondering Aloud.
Yeah, and I think about that one a lot, like just when I'm putting stuff together, how they really do add to the whole thing, but in this really odd way. It's like not something like you go, I want to hear this song because it's not maybe sure it counts as a song, but it's a thing and it's cool. So so you went from school and all of that to did that for a while, and then your first set of books was the starfish ones, right?
Yeah. Okay, now you got to go back again. I guess I was 4 or 5 when I decided I wanted to be a marine biologist.
Mhm.
I had to be around 7 or 8 when I decided I wanted to be a science fiction writer. And that was when I heard on CBC, which is our cute little national radio network. They played on Sunday morning the soundtrack to Walt Disney's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And it was very cool. I mean, it wasn't a soundtrack in the way we understand soundtracks today. It wasn't just the music, right? It was kind of a radio play with snippets of dialogue from the movie and a narrator filling in the things and the music, right? So it was basically you put on the thing and you hear over the course of 40 minutes Jules Verne's novel as interpreted by Walt Disney Studios. So this is what I listened to, and I thought it was really cool. And so I wrote down as much as I could on a purple crayon with foolscap, right? It was like, it ended up 2 pages, double-sided. And I gave it to Dad, pretended I'd like written it myself, which looking back on it was pretty stupid because he must have been in the room when the thing was playing. But it was my version of it. And he, was kind enough to not call me out on plagiarism and said, well, they abandoned Chip a little too quickly here. You might want to change this, that, or the other thing. And I thought, wow, I got away with this. Like anyone could do this. I could do this. So all the way through like elementary school, through junior high, through high school, I was writing. Um, and of course, and I was a better writer than most, but of course, none of it sold. I didn't even send any of it off, really. Um, And I sort of maintained that throughout grad school. In grad school, I started sending stuff off and started getting rejections. I got rejections. I mean, you know how the standard author talks about, how many hundreds of rejection letters they got before they said, I've got them all beat to hell. I actually got rejected from a magazine that I'd never even subscribed to or I'd never even sent anything to. I sent something off to Asimov's because I figured I wasn't hard enough for analog. And a couple of weeks later, I got a rejection, but it was from analog. And I guess what happened was that the editor at Asimov's had like looked at this and said, "This is really grotesque. Maybe they'll like it at analog," and then sort of passed it on to analog um, without telling me.
In my head, I was picturing it as proactively, look, we've been hearing about you.
Yeah, don't.
We
Yeah,
just want to let you know.
that's 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 that was kind of the vibe I was getting, right? It was yeah, George Skithers passed this on to me. He didn't like the futile ending. I think you've got, you've got several really intriguing ideas, but it really seems awfully futile. They all get squashed like bugs at the end, and maybe you could bring in some clowns or something. But it was the longest rejection letter I'd ever got, right? Um,
Was it a critique or something, or was something
well,
more?
yeah, no, it just said, and then he ended up by saying he was interested in seeing more of my work. So from that point on, for like the next 10 years, like, what was it? Stanley Schmidt, that was his name. Like, he was my man. Every time I'd write something, I'd send it off to him. And um, he would write back with these, sometimes 2, 3 page dissections, really great micro writing. The macro is not blah blah blah. A continuing complaint was this is really negative and it's really depressing. Um,
Shocker.
and something I didn't notice until like long, not just a few years back. I actually took pictures of these rejection letters over the time, and they got shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And then finally, I wrote this story called A Niche, which I thought was the best thing I had ever written. And it was the first time I got just a form letter, like, we're sorry, but we are oversold on manuscripts of this length. And it was about a bunch of, A Niche was about a bunch of people living in a geothermal power generating station at the bottom of the ocean, where the fish had, for some reason, gotten super huge. And I thought it was really good. And I was a marine biologist, so I kind of knew what I was writing about, right? I got this little form letter. And as it turned out, after I sent it off, all of a sudden everybody and their dog was releasing, like there were about five um, people at the bottom of the sea facing off giant sea monsters movies that
Mhm,
came out. I guess everybody heard that James Cameron was doing The Abyss.
mhm.
So Roger Corman figured he'd sneak in there. So he did Lords of the Deep, and then there was Deep Star Six, and then there was Leviathan, and then Cameron with The Abyss. And then Peter Watts's story comes in. And I'm sure that by this time, Analog was being absolutely fucking inundated by people who had seen all these movies and thought, well, this is the next hot thing. I'm going to write a science fiction story at the bottom of the sea. And they probably took like one glance at the first paragraph and thought, oh God, not another one, and just trashed it. But when you look at how the critiques got shorter and shorter, ending up like a form letter rejection, it's kind of hard to avoid the suspicion that I was getting worse with practice. Like the more I was writing, the less time they invested in me. But anyhow, Anisha ended up being the first 2 chapters of Starfish,
Mhm.
and the reason I started doing that was because I was actually working for a consortium of universities that was headquartered in at UBC that was trying to explore why marine mammals were they'd crashed by about 70 to 85% over the course of 10 years in the North Pacific and up in the Arctic and the Bering Sea. And there were a couple of interesting points about that. One of them was that if you were a marine mammal that ate krill, you were doing pretty much okay. If you were one that ate fish, you were on the rocks.
Mhm.
And the other interesting thing about it was that just a few years before the populations had started crashing, the US commercial fishing industry had moved into that big time with their factory ships. So that seemed like a pretty good
Yeah.
hypothesis to explore.
Mhm.
What I did not know at that time was that 90% of our funding was coming from the US commercial fishing industry and from various banks in Alaska and so on that supported the fishing industry. So that had this totally Weasley head of the um, of the consortium, who was very good. He was a very good ladder climber. He basically had developed a reputation by this of like taking everybody else's data and not crediting it properly, and so on. Anyhow, and he would sort of sidle up to me during Friday afternoon beers and says, maybe it's not the fishing. Maybe it's, it could be a Kaliki virus. It could be a sexually transmitted disease. Sea lions have really loose morals. Maybe we should be exploring that. And I put up with this shit for about as long as I could, which was about a year and a half, and then I quit in a huff. Um, and then I had like what, 18 months on unemployment, and I figured, what the hell else am I going to do? Like, it's not like I can get a job pumping gas with a PhD in marine mammal biology. So I started writing, and that's how I ended up becoming an author. But it was, I mean, who knows if I'd had a less slimy supervisor, possibly I would, never have made the time to write. I might just be a well-known marine mammologist in a very small circle of people publishing regularly in journals that 400 people at most read. So I'm actually kind of glad how it turned out.
Right, right. And it's neat kind of, you know, from a lifelong art guy point of view, hearing the stories, just talking about the potential things that you can or can't talk about or whatever, but then you'll tell me about this thing that could be happening behind the scenes for you and stuff like that. It's actually it's very inspiring to me. It's like to see, it's like, oh, okay, look, it's actually working for somebody. That's cool. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I have a weird kind of almost sense of survivor's guilt out of that. Like it's I know people who are more talented than I who aren't doing nearly as well financially.
mhm.
Now, I also know people who couldn't write their way out of a fortune cookie if you held a gun to their heads, who make the bestsellers lists. So the injustice works both ways.
Mhm.
But I have been, I think, probably more successful than I deserve to be. Um, and in some ways, it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes the fans are not the kind of people I would really want to hang out with. Um, there's a men's rights group called Return of the Kings that jizzed all over echopraxia. Um, and I think I've told you on, a couple of occasions just when we were hanging out that one of Elon Musk's brood mares is a fan of mine.
Yes.
Um, and
What?
it, on the one hand, in fact, I cannot tell you anything. I cannot tell you any details because of the NDAs I've signed, but I turned down an opportunity to do something very, very cool because it involved SpaceX.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and I just couldn't, it would have been glorious, but it also would have been Musk.
Right. Yeah. 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 It's a weird thing when that like I was in this band and we got an offer to open up for this other band that like, and it's not on the same level, but that we're kind of known for a lot of their financial stuff went through like white power people. And I had to tell the guy that because I was just a hired gun for it, but I was like, I can't do it. I can't. I don't know. Like I'm sorry, but it's
Well,
just
like these guys were white supremacists, or they just
no.
happen to
And
have a white supremacist at accountant.
the dude who ran it, who runs the band, has actually really gotten his shit back around and is kind of like become a real human being again. But I think because he's not from America, and so I don't know if he understood a lot of the cultural connections exactly. Like, so like he moved into the South and I think he got really enamored by the kind of masculine cosplay redneck big car thing without really realizing that the people that the a lot of the people that were involved with it that he knew were kind of in that. And then he was sort of like, but they're my friends, and didn't really, it took him a while to really get out of that, I think. And he has since done that, which is cool. But at the time, it was just kind of like, yeah, no. So,
It is hard. It's a lot easier to not get into that than it is to get out of it once you are in it. Like
yeah.
we are social mammals
Mhm.
and we are prey mammals.
Mhm.
And so, we crave the approval of the tribe in ways that bigger rationality. It's just this ancient survival instinct that we must conform and that we must, we got to make all these people around us who will protect us from the wolves and the tigers. We've got to make them like us or we
Mhm.
will die. Um, so I mean, this is, I guess it's one of the ways I comfort myself along a whole number of axes when I look at the way humanity fucks everything up. And when I look at things that conventionally are just nothing but evil that we do on an institutional and planetary and global basis. And it somehow makes it easier to go down and you realize we're just being mammals. Like we're not, I think we deserve extinction. I think that our hypocrisy, if we at least came out right out and said, yeah, we're just mammals, we're no different than any other mammals. We're gonna become a pest species, like everything would if it wasn't kept in check by predators and disease. I would at least have respect for it. Fuck. There's a line from one of the Dune books that says something about the way certain types of people are disingenuous and hypocritical and self-serving, blah blah blah. And it says, and the line is, you cannot hate them for this. You can only despise them. Or you can't blame them for this. You can only despise them because it's natural behavior.
Well, I was just talking last night actually about how bonobos are also cruel and operate, have a lot of those similar mechanics, or, it's like trading sex for favors, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's bred into. I had to come to actually came to terms with a Peter Watts thing a while back, um, with this idea that, okay, well, let me rewind. As an artist, you make stuff, you and as somebody who grew up kind of thinking, hey, people are pretty cool. We've done some really cool shit, and you want to think that, yes, I may die, but, we'll go on to do all the cool science fiction stuff and all that stuff. And, past number of years, I've kind of like gotten to the point where I'm just like, yeah, I just don't think that we've got another couple hundred years in us, hopefully after I'm dead. But, you know, and I really was thinking a lot about consciousness and, you know, being self-aware and many of the ideas that you've talked about, which, basically kind of saying, well, it's cool, but it doesn't necessarily need to be part of species survivability. And I do find myself kind of going, I think from a totally just looking at a species and having it survive for a long period of time, I can definitely see how consciousness is a major stumbling block in that, which is a shame because I like being conscious, you know?
Yeah, I mean the way I get around that is don't think of yourself as the individual, right? If we are in fact, and I could completely have my head up my ass. Remember that whole consciousness punchline was just because I couldn't think of another punchline. And the idea that consciousness serves no functional purpose, that it's a side effect, and in fact could be a disadvantage when you run into something that's intelligent but non-conscious, that just struck me as a super cool narrative gut punch.
Mhm.
It was a great what if story, right?
Mhm.
And as it turns out, I haven't really encountered a lot suddenly to dissuade me of that gut punch. Like I originally just came up with it as a narrative gimmick to end a science fiction novel, but it seems to have legs
Yeah.
in the sense that I seem to have a fairly big fanship in the neuro community and in the AI community. Um, and so I actually take that premise a lot more seriously now than I did in 2006 when the book came out. But I could still clearly have my head up my ass. It's not like I came to that conclusion because I'm a neuroscientist who scrupulously and rigorously eliminated all the possibilities, right? So I could have my head up my ass. But if I don't, and the blind sight thesis is legitimate, then the way you think about it is we are the parasite.
Hmm.
We are not the thing that is being parasitized.
Right.
This is the thing that is being parasitized. But no tapeworm in the long, venerable history of tapeworms ever decided to flush itself out its host's anus because the host would be better off without it.
Right.
And I like being a tapeworm, and
Right.
I like living inside this gastrointestinal tract. And if it impairs the fitness of the chassis that would be better off without me, and which, like, you know, again, does most of its actual cognition subconsciously anyway. Um, well, I mean, I've already cut my inclusive fitness to zero because I'm never reproducing.
Right.
So what the hell? Who cares? Don't be like I guess my point is don't be depressed by that.
I don't know if
Consider yourself king tapeworm.
commercial time. So today I wanted to make you aware of Stoneburner. This is a record I did a number of years ago called Apex Predator. Stoneburner is my, well, it started out with this idea of kind of what would dance music on Arrakis, on Dune sound like. And so I did a bunch of material with that, maybe 6 records, I think. And I realized that I'd kind of pushed it as far as I could go. Ironically, I just released a new record called Christ Knife with that style of music just because it's been long enough now that I can enjoy writing it again. But I decided I needed to start writing the industrial record that I've been promising I would make since I was a kid, and that ended up being this record here called Technology Implies Belligerence, based on, well, not based on, but very, very influenced by Peter Watt's novel Blind Sight. So, yeah, if you're into industrial music, I'd like to think that this is kind of considerably better than your average Bear's industrial music. It's still angry, it's still noisy as fuck, but it's, I feel like it's much more elevated. I feel like there's a lot of content that gets discussed. It isn't just, I don't know, it isn't built for dance floors. It was built to be music, and if you can dance to it, that's cool. But it's about talking about real things, talking about or telling stories or whatever. It's not limited to the whole cyber thing or what so many. Unfortunately, I feel like so many industrial bands do. So please, if you're into looking for industrial music, if you're into that sort of thing, yes, like Nine Inch Nails, please check it out. I'll tag some videos on at the end of this interview. I'm very excited. I have a new record coming out. Maybe if you're seeing this, it's already out. Called Post Industrial Occult, and my buddy Jim Marcus of Die Warsaw and Go Fight, and just his own badass self is mixing it and working with me on the production. So hopefully it'll be amazing. I think it'll be amazing. Maybe by the time this is out, you'll know or you'll have heard of it, and it is amazing. But I'm very proud of it, and again, I feel like it is taking industrial music and actually trying to bring back the art form. I don't think I'm depressed by it exactly, but it was definitely a large paradigm shift, you know, the paradigm.
That's
Um,
uh, that's a good pronunciation.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You know, I feel that, you know, I like doing that and putting the emphasis on the wrong syllables. Um,
It's right up there with Knigget.
Yeah, silly. Um, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. I think it's okay. So I had a very self-centered, selfish moment at one point when I was like, when all of this everything started kind of going to shit, and I was like, why? All I want to do is make stuff, and in order to kind of do this, there needs to be a functioning, government country. And it's like, why did this have to happen? And but then I was like, because it has to happen to somebody. Because these things happen and that's what they do, and you don't get a choice in the matter. It has to happen to somebody. And so it's kind of a similar sort of like stepping back and kind of going, well, uh, maybe consciousness was a bad idea. Maybe humans aren't, but you're here, so do the thing, Like you can either and that's been our kind of recurring thing within these interviews is that whole like um well, there's death and that's going to happen. And what I do, like I could let that destroy me, or I can just step up and kind of, well, okay, and here we go, Because you know, why bother jumping off early to avoid the rush?
I bet you haven't internalized death. I know I haven't. I know
I don't
intellectually,
think we
I know
can.
intellectually I'm going to die. Nobody is dumb enough to say they think they're going to live forever, except for people like Kurzweil and maybe Musk. But I think that if we evolved to actually internalize on a gut level
Mm,
our own mortality, I think we would kind of go extinct. I mean, there've been some studies that show that people who believe in free will, for example, tend to do better on exams.
mhm.
They tend to have, I mean, it, God help me. I mean, I hate having to say this, but people with a cheerful can-do attitude tend to get more done. It's weird. It's delusional, but it's a self-fulfilling delusion.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scripting, it's psychological scripting.
Yeah. So, I mean, I am not ready to die. I'm at that stage. I'm at the state like there was for most of my life, I've been, I do not understand people who commit suicide. If you're in constant pain, I suppose, yeah, but no matter how bad your existence is, it is an existence.
Right.
There is something that is you that is existing. When you no longer exist, that's it. You've got no options.
And I
And
think
so for most of my life, it was like, I don't understand that mindset. Now I'm at that stage where I don't want to die. And on a gut level, I probably don't really, I haven't really internalized that I'm going to. But I'm also at that stage where if the bug and I were like flying across the Atlantic to go to a con or something and the plane went down, I would probably grab her by the hoof and and I would say, we've had a good run. And and don't know if saying I would die happy is the right way to put it because I would still be scared shitless, but I would die satisfied that I hadn't wasted my time.
mhm. that
And
you know
that's a significant change for me.
that was something once again from as an artist, and maybe I don't know because my whole life has always been making this stuff, and it wasn't until this fucking thing, Red and Tooth and Claw, which Peter wrote the forward to, which is cool, um, where I was like, you spend your whole life making this stuff, and you hope that at some point you'll hit the thing, and you're like, okay, if I go right now, that has that's my thesis. This is my thesis on life, and at least I'm not reproducing, but here are ideas, and here's a thing that I think that sums up all of my shit, and now at least it has gone out to however many people. And that was um that was a pretty cool thing, like to have that moment. And I still believe that I have many more better things in me somewhere, somehow. I got that rock album that I sent you. I think it's one of the best things I've ever done. I'm crazy proud of it. But you know, it's almost like I like it was like creating a save point. Like, yeah,
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I
yeah,
mean, it's not like you can go back and respawn at that point,
no, no, which would
but
be
it does mean that what you have done up to that point, nobody and nothing can take it away.
it's bottled up. I feel like I bottled my core, if that makes sense. And so now like everything else is gravy. Cool. Although, when I was in school, I did all these paintings on couch vinyl with acrylic paint. That shit's going nowhere. They're not necessarily great paintings, but they'll be here with us on this planet for thousands of years. So,
Have I told you about a guy called Christian Book?
mhm.
Um, he sees your crappy little vinyl paintings and he raises them to like the end of fucking life on Earth. He has successfully, and he's been working on this for probably over 20 years now, and he's finally succeeded. He has genetically engineered a bacterium that the a particular gene spells out a poem. And the gene not only spells out a poem, it codes for a functional protein. And the protein codes for a response to the poem. And it's about, staying and going, and it makes reference to fairy rosy glows, and the protein fluoresces red. And he's injected this fucker into Deinococcus radialarans, which is Conan the bacterium, which is I mean, for anybody who is not familiar with this incredibly tough microbe, it thrives in the hearts of nuclear reactors. It lives in acid. You can find it at the bottom of the sea. It lives on the outsides of spaceships. It's it's fucking unkillable. And he has encoded it in this thing. And Deinococcus is going to survive. It's going to outlast our species. It might outlast, most of the biosphere. And this thing's still going to be in it. I actually, when I wrote Echopraxia, at the end of Echopraxia, the protagonist discovers he's doing gene typing on something. And he discovers a fragment of this poem, which has gotten loose. Unfortunately, a lot of civilization is using DNA media to store technical blueprints and stuff. So it's also mixed up with the blueprints to the Leningrad sewer system. But it's still there. It was my little homage to Christian books. He calls it the Xenotext. Um, and he gave up on it, I guess, 10 years ago. He couldn't get the fucking thing to work, but now he has, and the book is coming out just in the next couple of months. And
Absolutely.
I
Well,
mean,
okay.
that is amazing. That is immortal art. I mean, all due respect to your
Yeah,
vinyl
no,
painting.
no. Now it's a challenge. So I'm going to start breeding tardigrades with my face. Someday everything's going to get wiped out. The sun blew up, shrunk back down. There's just this little pile of ash, and there's going to be these tardigrades all
Tardigrades.
running around with like dreadlocks.
Yep.
Right. So, well, that's a good segue then. From under the sea, you then went to out into the universe with Blind Sight, and then followed up by Acapraxia. Blind Sight has one of my very favorite reasons that the aliens are not immediately attacking, but certainly getting kind of wound up and checking us out, which
Yeah.
is that they have picked up our transmissions and they can't make any sense of them. And so they decide that the only reason that anything intelligent would put that out into the universe is to steal resources or take resources away. And therefore, it's seen as a sign of attack, which I think is brilliant. Um, It also centers around, as I said, one of the main characters that I actually very, very much relate to. And there's a story that he tells in this. And I think it was one of the first things I said to you. But like, you came out to one of our shows, and at the very end, it was like, look, I got fanboy on you for 1 second here on this. And it was because there's a point in the story where one of the characters, his ex-girlfriend, is dying of this really awful thing. And he doesn't know how to cope with it. So he spends all of this time going online and looking up how to talk to people who are dying. And then she passes, and that's the thing. And that was one of those moments where I felt incredibly seen because so much of being autistic and I don't know, just weird. Uh, so much of me learning to interact with people has came out of having this Terminator flow chart pop up as soon as they said something like, okay, well, I can say this and I'm going to get punched. You know, and it's kind of down, degrees of how, of what's, and it works most of the time, but, even now, there are times where, even in my marriage where Donald will say something that a normal person would apparently know how to respond to. And I just sit down, I'm just like, I got nothing. I don't know, what response you want. I don't know, where to go with that. So I told Peter about that, and then you told me a story that was actually a real thing that you had gone through.
Yeah, which oddly enough, hails back to Mike Big, who we were talking about
Right.
earlier in this very, yeah, Mike Big was dying of cancer and I felt like I should talk to him, but I was so fucking scared. Like, what do you say to somebody who's dying?
Hmm.
You joke about it? Do you like, and it must have taken me a week to screw up my courage. And when I finally called him up, I still didn't know what I was going to say. Um, we didn't have consensus to to go to provide the Terminator flow chart. I just sort of called him up and wung it. And the dude, like, he made it easy for me. He joked. He was, he didn't shy away from the fact that he was dying. He actually laughed about people tiptoeing around, asking him how he was feeling. And he's like, well, how do you think I'm feeling? I'm fucking dying. But it was like, it was so easy to talk to the guy. In fact, it was probably easier to talk to him then than it had ever, because all the other times I talked to him, it had been about seal biology. And, I've been trying to impress him with my grad student insight. And of course, I always had something I wanted from him because he was on my committee. Um, and this was a completely different kind of conversation. And you know something? I'm going to say this now. I don't think I've told anybody about it before. But I also told you about that asshole who was running the consortium.
Hmm.
Um, I am I am half convinced that he gave me the wrong directions to Mike Big's funeral so that I would not show up and people would notice that. Um, because I ended up halfway up Vancouver Island. The instructions didn't make any sense. And then the next Monday, it was like, oh my goodness, Peter, I'm so sorry. But he did shit like that.
Right.
Um, and I have no proof,
Right.
except they were pretty simple directions.
Right.
And somehow he got them wrong. And I ended up missing Mike Big's funeral.
Man, who does that shit?
Well, his name's Andrew Traits, if you want to look him up.
Dear dude, you don't know me, but um, trying to one of the fun things about blindsight that I've used to explain to people is that it's kind of the man who mistook his wife for a hat in space.
Well, it's better than Twilight in space, which has also been described as.
Oh, but yeah, well, okay, so let's yeah, and that's a good first. Man Who Mistook His Wife is a fantastic book by Oliver Sacks.
Yep.
And
Yep. It was definitely an inspiration.
And I was saying last night, like, let me tell you how cheesed I am that they don't make the device that they use, the caliber to uh, figure out the size of metal rods, that they don't call them Phineas gauges, because that's like the best idea ever. Um, so, and as the book progresses, the characters in it go through any number of the experiences that the people in Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat went through, because their brains are just being broken down and rebuilt and broken down and rebuilt. Um, but also there is a vampire, and as much as I love this book, and I have tried to shove it off on many people, and I sit there and I try and explain to them, I was like, look, it's it's this in space with a vampire. Now I have to assure you that the vampire thing is not at all how you're thinking of it being a vampire. I mean, yes, but also no. Uh, and if you go online, it's pretty easy to find on Peter's rifters.org.
.com. .com.
There he has actually a lecture that breaks down that he did for actual real people, explaining how we bring vampires back and what they are and how they operate.
I
Um,
got an email from somebody in the pharmaceutical industry saying, "Who are you? You've you've clearly worked in the pharmaceutical industry because this is exactly how we would have done it."
um, and it's just I don't want to say too much because I just don't feel like I can do at all justice to it. But if you are at all like me, it is everything I like in fiction and science and the world. It's just like all of that stuff all at once. I mean, I liked it enough that I based a record on it, and Peter was kind enough to actually add some
It was a
dial.
cool record.
Oh, thank you. It it was a model conceptually for that record because I really wanted to. I always want to make things that are more than some of their parts. I wanted to have like footnotes for all the lyrics, like this is why, this is how this all works, and this is how it's grounded. Um, and then the sequel to that was Echopraxia, uh, where we got to learn about Portia, this pretty amazing spider that thinks very, very slowly like a mammal, which is really fucking cool.
Portia
Um,
is very cool. I
it,
take
it,
it you've read Adrian Tchaikovsky's Children of Time.
I'm not.
It is dedicated to Portia.
Oh,
It basically the premise is this human expedition to an alien planet, which is intended to sort of reshape its biosphere for human color, goes seriously pear shaped, and people in the ships are moving at relativistic but slower than light speeds. So there's a lot of time that passes on this planet, and the Portia spiders are the ones that evolve
mm,
into a sapient intelligence. They use ants as computers, hive pheromonal circuits and stuff. They use ants as these kind of weird slave Turing machines, and it's a very cool. It and his latest book, Shroud. I would also have to. It's like I don't know if it's out here yet or not. I got a look at it in advance copy. Probably the best alien ecosystem I've ever seen in science fiction. It's super cool. You will love it.
that's awesome. Yeah. No, I'm always looking for that sort of thing. I've been finally, it's been out forever, but going through Lathe of Heaven, reading Lathe of Heaven.
Oh yeah.
And I know it's a classic. There's a lot of those classics I never just got around to. But it's one of those neat moments of kind of, I understand why it's a classic as you read it, you know.
Yeah, I thought it was a good book. It I liked other Le Guin's better. I think the problem with Lathe of Heaven for me was it wobbled too much in terms of whether the timelines were actually changing.
Hmm.
Somebody dreams and reality changes.
Hmm.
The timeline folks, that's great. That makes, it's a kind of a monkey's paw with dreams, right? and that's great. But you had that character who kind of half remembered the way things were before.
Hmm.
And it seemed to me that was a bit of a cheat. The reality has either changed or it has not.
Right. Well, I think that
And if it has changed, your memories should have changed along with it.
the part of that is that both the main character, and then the doctor who is kind of coaching him, uh, because of they have this kind of privileged position of being involved with it. They're sort of outside of all of it. But I also, yeah, I can totally see why. I mean, I
I
guess.
mean, it was still like head and shoulders above 90% of the stuff in the genre
Mhm.
because it was Le Guin. But yeah, I mean, comparing it to something like The Dispossessed or The Left Hand of Darkness, um, the prose is like stellar
Mhm.
and the ideas are stellar in all of them. But I didn't find an inconsistency in the other books the way
Mhm.
I found in that. But it's a niggle, right?
Right, yeah. Well, one of the things I thought was very cool was when I was working on the Wolf book, and I'm very used to you interacting with you in the as the science writer person. And it was neat because there was this one point where you were like, well, maybe this is just the rules of this particular world, that this is how this works. And so it was kind of cool to see that conceit from somebody I'm very used to. I have to like when you were writing the thing for contracting iris, where you're like, I need to understand how the virus would actually work in order to write it.
Yeah.
And whereas, you know,
Just
more or
just for
less.
your just for your audience, Contracting Iris is a song that Steve wrote um, that I based a story on. Um, I based it on the lyrics, and it appeared ultimately in Lightspeed. I think you had it as
There's a
bonus
bonus on the
content and
record, and
something.
there's an
Yeah.
audiobook
And
version.
like about a year later, it appeared in Lightspeed. So it's available out there for free. And it actually made it into a couple of best of the year collections.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Awesome. I didn't know that.
At least one, maybe two. So yeah.
Huh.
I mean, it's it kind of surprised me because the idea of something taking over a body is kind of an old trope,
Mhm.
right? It's a body snatchers before body snatchers. Like Ray Bradbury wrote a couple of stories about it. Um, so the question was, do you really have anything new to say?
All right.
And to me, the cool thing was, okay, but this is based on a song lyric, right? This is the genesis of this idea comes from an entirely different. It's almost like the difference between a video game and a novel.
Mhm.
They're two totally different media, and so that in itself is the original spin. Um, but I guess people, just without having, every time this thing got published in Lightspeed, it refers to your song, and there's a link to your song, I think. Um, but the story did seem to stand on its own, which is cool.
It did. It did. And
And it pisses me off that you couldn't use that original video. I played that
well,
video, 100 times just for inspiration while I was writing it, and you had like copyright issues with some of the imagery or
yeah, well,
something.
it was just hacked together from other movies and things like that. Just
It
that.
was a really good, like the Iris character in the bathtub and doing like a lot of it just seemed very, very on point.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No. Shit. I don't remember the name of the movie that was from either. Something to do with horses, but I don't remember what. Um.
Anyhow, it was a really good video.
Thanks. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I use that when I do the song live, so it's always showing. Like, 'cause apparently you can show stuff like that. You just can't release it.
Yeah, yeah. No, that works. I understand the reasoning, but it's a
Yeah.
shame.
Like, and I've done stuff like that, and I've put stuff like that out there before, but I figured, being attached to you, it might get a little bit more under people's radar, and the last thing I wanted to do was cause any problems.
Mhm.
But and so the big question that has been on my mind for is now that we've got blindsight and echopraxy is still waiting with bated breath to find out how Siri gets home. And uh
Well, I mean, that's perhaps the wrong question.
well, the thing
Perhaps the question you should be asking is, what is it that's coming home?
that yes, that as well. what is coming home, and also how all of the different life forms relate to all of this.
Yeah.
That's the other big one is like what is uh is the Portia thing that was on uh ah not Crown of Thorns.
Icarus.
Yeah, Icarus, yeah. Well, they were, yeah. If that is related to the scramblers, or and how the scramblers relate to the fireflies and all of that stuff. So,
I mean, that's actually pretty. That's actually not a spoiler at all. That's pretty much laid out. Like Rorschach, it's probably a misnomer to talk about the scramblers as being separate from Rorschach.
right, yeah,
They're part of an integrated structure. They're kind of at a point where even talking about things in terms of biology is probably insufficient. Um, Portia was essentially a periscope. It was a spy drone that was sent in system along the telematter stream.
mm,
And it was designed so that it could function even if only a very little of it got through, which is where the whole Porsche idea of it can be really stupid and small and yet still be capable of advanced cognition given enough time.
mhm.
But as it turns out, a lot of it got down. So it basically coated the inside of Icarus Station like flop sweat, and it learned a lot. And part of it is now in Zombie Brooks.
Right.
So yeah, they're all. I mean, that's all I thought pretty clear. Although a lot of people have told me that they found echopraxia confusing. So I'm kind of chalking it up to middle of trilogy blues
I think
and and hoping people sort of plug through it and sort of and hang in for omniscience. But I'm not writing omniscience now. I'm writing another Sunflowers novella because I've got to have that in. It's contracted. I've got a bunch of stuff that I'm doing.
is Sunflower the one with the ship inside the stone asteroid thing? Is that
Area 4, yeah, the my my raspberry to all the people who like write lazy science fiction by saying, yeah, we just went out past Jupiter and we found these stargates that allow us, and the people who built the stargates said they must be long extinct, so we can travel the galaxy and we didn't have to do anything ourselves. And yeah, so that was just my way of saying, you assholes, what do what about the poor guys who had to build those things in the first place?
there was a part of that book towards the after the middle part where I think it's just, and I always love these in books where it's breaking down taking a whole bunch of events over a large period of time and kind of crushing it all down. And it's just kind of a list of different things that they went through and they dealt with over a fairly long period of time. And you really do kind of get the sense of the exhaustion and how that would deeply affect these long-term crew members, who it's like
Yeah.
waking fuck, TV show that's on that we've been watching. It's for people.
Severance?
Hmm?
Severance.
Severance. Yeah,
Severance?
that's it. That's it. Yes, severance. So it's like getting up and going into work every day, and going home and turning around and immediately going to work, and so it's like the that, but on a much longer timeline, and then being woken up to deal with the giant thing that's out there that we now then
Yeah.
everything's falling apart that we have to deal with, and
Yeah, I've got the one I'm working on now, um, answers some of the questions about gremlins, gives you a bigger view of what's going on in the universe at large. And at the very end of the epic, like billions of years past this, they're actually like out of the Virgo supercluster now, and there's going to be this one thing where they're being chased by something. I haven't figured out the details yet. They're being chased by something. They're trying to desperately do a build in this area, and they're not finding enough raw materials. And it turns out they're not finding enough raw materials, even though they should be there, because something else has already put a gate there,
hmm,
and it's not them, and
right.
it's not the spore program. So they just dive through that gate, and they end up like several filaments, galactic filaments away. And at the very end, it's so far in the future that blue dwarfs are finally starting to exist. Um, the only two characters left are Sunday and the chimp, and they're basically this old married couple who have watched the entire universe wind down, and there is a kind of an epic punchline that will explain the term sunflowers, why I'm talking sunflowers about it. And Sunday is super old, and the last thing she does is shut down the chimp, who at this point wants to be shut down. And they see how it ends. They see how the story ends.
That's cool.
It's not much of a spoiler because I may never get around to. I'm writing these things in bits and pieces. I've got this huge arc. I mean, think of it as this huge long string, and I'm putting beads on the string just as they strike me, right? They will make a contiguous whole eventually. But right now it's like 99% string with just a couple of beads.
They're operating with string theory is really cool.
Yeah.
So, which actually, just so from a writing point of view, um, and a science point of view, how often do you end up in a situation where you're like, okay, well, I've got this really cool idea, but now I need to figure out a way because I have had that with writing sometimes where it's like, but I can't get it to make enough sense given the constraints of our universe. Like, like with Red and Tooth and Claw, I was able to come up with this feasible enough sort of that it was close enough to the real world that I could slide it in as okay, this is how this works for me, and I could feel okay presenting it that way.
Sorry, doofus. Yes, go on.
Oh, so do you ever end up in a situation where it's like, well, I've got this great idea, but I can't get that to work in I can't get that to function within our understanding of the science.
Not so much a problem with the physics, um, more a problem with the plotting. I know where I want to be, and I know that I want to do some very, very cool stuff along the way.
Mhm.
How to connect those up in an organic way that seems to make sense is always giving me problems. Um, Closest thing I came to, I guess, a problem with the physics was solved by, I mean, this is one of the coolest things about being an author is that I get to actually hang out with, or at least correspond with, people who are actually working on the things that I'm just speculating about, right? So I've got this whole 21st century version of a Rolodex of people who work in AI, neuroscientists, um, the guys at Cortical Labs, the who've just released that head cheese, the actual brain cells computer that they're selling
Mhm, mhm.
for. Um, yeah, after I did that piece in the Atlantic, they reached out to me, so they are now on my Rolodex. Um, and this one particular guy uh, owns about half the patents on laser technology, and so I needed a way for the creation of black holes to deeply go south, right? Because Area 4 is a singularity powered ship. And this guy basically gave me that idea that you create, I mean, I'd read this before that there's an actual paper out there on creating black hole powered starships. And the first thing you can do is you can like build a black hole with lasers. It's you basically get in close to the sun so you can get shitloads of solar energy. You build up and you get a bunch of gigawatt lasers and you have them all fire simultaneously at a common center. And because matter and energy are interchangeable, according to Einstein, enough energy meeting in a particular place will actually generate a solid singularity.
Mm. Because it'll
So
create that density, the density.
yeah, yeah. It didn't need, so I didn't need help with that because this was a paper that I already had, but I needed a way for things to go south. And he just pointed out that what happens is if you have this whole ring of lasers all pointing in and just one of them fails to fire, what you've got is a net path of least resistance. So that the black hole, instead of sitting there in the uterus where it belongs, suddenly just all these vectors are pushing it in all directions except one.
Right.
And so that's the direction. It basically gets squeezed out like somebody popping a zip.
Hmm.
And so all of a sudden now you've got this black hole which passes through matter. I mean, it's super dense, right? It passes through rock like it was vacuum, but it's still attracted to mass. And there's the main singularity that's the heart of Area 4A. You've got the asteroid itself. So you've got all of a sudden you've got these weird dynamics where everything's orbiting around each other. And that was something that this Peter Lorraine is his name. Um, and that was just that one idea, which I would never have thought of.
Hmm.
But he says, yeah, no, you just leave that one weak spot and everything goes to shit really fast. And so I built the entire climax of the novella around that. And personally, I thought it worked really well. Um, so wait a minute, this is okay. No, this is not supposed to be plugged into anything, I guess. It's just a wire sticking out of the wall.
Oh, huh. I like it.
Yeah, it's one way to test it.
All right. Well, no, that's I guess returning briefly to passions, is there anything right now that has come under your radar that is really just like whether you're using it for writing or just in general, like that's really getting you off? That's like really just like you're enjoying having a ch thinking about it and kind of learning about.
No, I mean, that's
Right,
there.
well,
I'm having trouble, when you have trouble writing a story, I tend to do kind of what the bug has taught me to do, this free write, where you just basically start writing whatever comes into your head. And I've found that that actually allows plot developments to happen kind of organically. So I get excited when I'm doing that. There is a point when you get into the back in the old days before I was an old fart, I would listen to music while I wrote. And you would really know that you were in the zone because an entire album would play and you wouldn't remember a single note because you were that focused.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's sometimes that happens. Like now, and it's like, yeah, this sort of fits. It's like a that kind of puzzle solving. It's almost like a scientific problem solving kind
Yeah,
of thing, where you try and make those pieces fit. That's exciting, but that's not a specific, it's not like,
like an external thing.
yeah, it's not like a particular magic bag of sand or something, or a show like Severance, which I
Right.
just, I am entranced by that show. But it's a methodology, and it's when the methodology works, um, I find is really really turns my crank.
Hmm.
The things that are taking up most of my time now are don't so much turn my crank as frustrate me. There's the ongoing saga of Neil Blomkamp's um, vampire biology movie and the ongoing possibility of a Blind Sight series or a movie, all of which all of which I am assured and have been assured for months now that it'll be ready to sign any day now.
Hmm.
Um, but there's always something,
Right.
and and when that kicks in, then all of a sudden I've got a shitload of work to do and very little time to do it.
Hmm.
Um, I'm still doing some stuff with Blur, the guys that I did the secret level, the Keanu Reeves
Hmm.
robots punching each other in the face with chainsaws short. Um, I still do stuff with them on occasion. And again, all this stuff just comes down the pike, and you've got like 7 days to do it.
Hmm.
And it's good because it exercises creative muscles that I've never used before.
Hmm.
Um, but it's also not something that you sort of put out the door and think, "Ma, I have created a piece of great art." I don't feel like I've created a piece of great art for quite some time. Um, so like, yeah, right now it's and there's the I'm working on a screenplay with Arthur Jaffa. And he's put that on pause because recent developments in AI have been so radical and profound that he's afraid that the whole story is going to be completely obsolete before it gets made. So I'm actually going to be talking to him later this week to try and figure out where to go from that. So it's a lot of putting out brush fires and waiting for deadlines, and then having to meet them. Um, in a way, I kind of miss the days when all I had to do was write a novel. But that said, the I'm kind of liking the way the new Sunflowers novella is shaping up. And that's kind of exciting me. And, after all this shit gets out of the way, I mean, especially if the blindsight stuff happens, um, that's gonna light a fire under my ass to do omniscience.
Right.
Because the moment blindsight gets turned into something other than a novel, there's going to be heightened interest in basically the unfinished trilogy.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, right now my life is a lot of hurry up and wait, but I can't complain because, as I said, I'm doing okay financially.
Mhm.
Um, and like you, I feel like I got a shitload more to write. And also like
Feel
you,
that
I
way,
haven't
but it was like
internalized
I
my own
thought that was
imminent
a
death.
good save point.
Sorry? Yeah,
So I still feel that way. I just that was a good save point.
it
It's
was.
kind of a chance of feeling like, okay, I actually accomplished this goal, you know?
And honestly, I think we need these save points because your your friend's reassurances notwithstanding, up here in Canada,
Yeah,
we're getting pretty worried.
yeah,
And I mean, Trump's literally talking about throwing out the 1908 treaty that established the US Canadian border. What kind of idiot, designed that treaty? That was the worst treaty of all time. Like he's fucking Putin.
hmm,
I mean, he's probably literally fucking
yeah, I
Putin. I
know.
mean, just given the, but Uh, yeah, and that's something else. The polar ice cap is melting. All that wonderful mineral wealth is in Canada's north is becoming easily more accessible. And what two fucking fascist countries are we right between?
Right.
Um, so on the one hand, there's Peter Watts gets to be creative, and on the other hand, there's this whole funky country could be under siege in 6 months,
Right.
and that tends to be a bit of a distraction. And it tends to bring me down to earth, and it tends to make me think I might be wasting my time writing, far future science fiction or even near future cautionary science fiction. Maybe what I should be learning to do is archery or how to slip cyanide into somebody's coffee. Um, because as you know, we don't have a lot of guns up here.
Yeah.
But the great thing about a bow and arrow is you can always reuse the arrows if you can pull them out of the body.
You got moose, and they're pretty badass. You could like weaponize the moose and the polar bears.
There are certain types of brainworms that get into moose that basically made them go rogue, and they yeah, this is what we need to do. Rabid meese. Yeah.
Some squirrel, man. Get
I
the
mean,
get the moose.
I
Get the
was
moose,
saying
go
to
from
the bug,
government.
in terms of basically now just the big nations just basically saying this is the way it's going to be, pipsqueak, and I'll slap you and you'll like it. We are now living in a situation where the doomsday machine from Doctor Strangelove is looking like the only sane possible means of self-defense. Um, and how fucked up does the world have to be when Doctor Strangelove
Yeah.
is what you look to for sane defense? I mean, we won't be able to build um, a nuclear doomsday machine, but I bet we could make a biological one.
I was just talking about that last night. Yep.
We could just, like we could take Ebola and stick it in an encephalitis jacket or something so that it would, or mix Ebola up with HIV, something that has a slow, steady burn, right? The thing
Well,
about
yeah,
Ebola
that
is
seems to be the best way.
it kills you so fucking fast that all the outbreaks implode before they have a chance to get around the world. But I bet you, like, if Canada, if the smallest nation could say, this is what we've got, there's no cure, not for us, not for anybody. It'll kill you in 72 hours. And it's already latent in the world's population. All we have to do is release this little
Part
thing to
two. Yeah.
activate it. So don't attack us.
Mhm.
I think I mean, that's the only way we can defend ourselves against those kind of incursions by something that's vastly, I mean, this is like the ultimate in asymmetric warfare.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know if it'll come to that. I hope it doesn't come to that. But I also hope if it does come to that, there are people in biolabs up here in Canada that are working on it. I doubt there are. We're too candy ass to do it. You guys would do it, but you guys don't need to. So yeah, we're fucked. This is supposed to be a thing about passions and things that makes us enthusiastic, isn't it? I'm sorry that I
No,
went down
you
that
know,
road, but
it's about things we feel strongly about,
yeah,
and certainly not being dead is a very reasonable.
yeah. Or occupied. Being occupied isn't great either, I would imagine.
I know. Well, I do hope that saner heads will prevail. But what you gonna do?
Yeah, well, I hope I'll do whatever it takes, but I'm probably enough of a coward that I'll just probably hide under the bed or something. I'd like to think I go down fighting. The uh the Valentine's poem I wrote to Caitlin this year actually was about that. How I would hope that we would go down fighting, but maybe we'll just run away and whatever it is. The title of the poem was Berry Head and Waffle Pants, which makes little sense to you, but
But it sounds like it's very important.
it's very important to the bug and I.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. We got each other.
Well, and that's and that really again goes back to like my entire point of like I can't look out there. I'll find out what I need to know as it happens because right now it's this and this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the humanity kind of deserves to sink into the quagmire with Triceratops, but in the meantime, I will lie in bed, hoof tickling with my wife, and watching Severance
Yep.
and season 2 of Andor.
Hmm. Well, and you brought BoJack Horseman into our life because that has
I am
become.
glad to have done that.
Mhm. No, well, that's Donna's go-to thing. Like whenever every month or so, that will just be on. You know,
It
I don't
bears
have to pay attention
rewatching.
to it. It's there. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's that Breaking Bad. Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
those
What
are
else is
the
starting
comfort
soon?
shows.
Jesus, there's another show that's starting around the same time. Its next season is starting around the same time as Andor. The Last of Us.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The Last of Us is starting again too. Now there's an apocalyptic
Have you played
show
it?
that,
I mean,
sorry?
you're
Yeah, I played them both, but I'm talking about the series, the TV
yeah,
series,
yeah, yeah.
which is fucking brilliant.
Mhm.
But yeah, I play I don't know if I would play the second one again because it was both emotionally draining and it was terrifying.
Mm.
It was I mean it is definitely the most emotionally involving um games series I've ever played. But there was also that scene. You've played the second one, right?
I don't know because it's not out for PC yet.
Isn't it? What did I play it on?
It's or at least no, I don't think it is. It's a console exclusive, I believe.
Huh. Well, there is a scene that takes place in Seattle in a hospital where the original outbreak occurred. Um, and you're basically in the basement of this hospital with a flashlight that barely works, and there are no lights. And it is the scariest, most intense, like fucking bone chilling battle run and hide sequence that I have ever experienced in a video game. And I don't know if I want to go through it again.
Seems reasonable.
um,
Well,
But
no.
also it's just it's a game that is full of misery and it is also a game that is full of love.
Mhm.
And your heart breaks for the characters. And I don't know how much you know about The Last of Us 2, the
I know
second
nothing about
game. Okay, well, the amazing thing about it is that you play both sides.
it. Mm.
You start off playing Ellie, and then all of a sudden you flip back and you're playing Abby, who's the antagonist, um, whose father and all her friends were massacred by Joel while he was rescuing Ellie to try and save the world, right? Um, and it's you can't pick a side.
Mhm.
Like at one point, you're being hunted, you're Ellie, and you're being hunted by these vicious killer dogs, and you have to shoot them, right? And then when you're playing Abby, you're walking through the kennel and you're playing ball with the dogs, and they love you and you love them, and they're just big, dumb, goofy dogs. And when you shoot people in Cyberpunk or Skyrim or Fallout or any number of games, they will fall over. They may scream, but they fall over. In The Last of Us, you shoot somebody, they cry out, and their friends call back to them
Mhm.
and try and encourage them as they die.
Right.
Like it does so many things that a video games don't generally do, except be a proper video game because you can't, you're not allowed to make any narratively important decisions.
Yeah, it's on rails.
They know what they want you to do. They know they want you to end up. So all you as the player get to do is move the arms and legs of the characters as they go from point A to point B. But it's the things at those points that tell the story, and you have no impact on that. And I don't blame them for it. It's a if you want to tell a really good story, you can't just hand the controls over to any Yahoo with $50 in their pocket. Um, but it's the trade-off, you know. On the other hand, you've got the Bethesda games where, you can do anything, but the dialogue is lame and there's continuity errors and it's shallow. It's broad but shallow.
Have you tried Baldur's Gate 3 yet?
I have not.
Baldur's Gate
I
3.
haven't tried. I haven't even tried. What was that one you got me? Atlas something? No. You gave me a game, a big
You,
AAA game.
one of them, shit,
And mouthwashing. You got me that too. I haven't played
mouthwashing.
either.
Yes, that.
I haven't played either of those.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Mouthwashing is pretty intense, and you can go through it in like 4 hours. It's
Really?
real fast. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for you maybe. I'm still stuck on Stray. I rage quit Stray. How often have you heard anyone say that?
Well, it's not like I mean, it's not like there's like fighting in this. There's some running, but it's a story, and it's. I think you'll really really like it, and also
Yeah.
the other one too. Somerville. That was the other one I said. Somerville, and both of those are they're not like
You
really
gave me another one. It was like a big, like kind of Microsoft one with like mechs or spaceships or something in it.
maybe I don't know. But I know I sent you Somerville a few years ago, and then and mouthwatching.
Okay, I wonder where I got Somerville from. I've also got Tacoma from somebody.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I've got a bunch of games I haven't got around to playing, which I
It's almost
probably
like
should.
stories where you actually do have a certain amount of autonomy to Baldur's Gate's a fantastic does a great job of that. And you
Have you
don't
played Elden Ring?
hmm?
Would you compare it to Elden Ring? Have you played Elden Ring?
I have Elden Ring I haven't played it a ton because I generally just don't like Souls-like stuff like the fighting isn't all that important to me. I enjoy parts of it, but for the most part it's like I don't want to have to work that hard to move through it.
Yeah, yeah.
I it's turn-based combat. So it's kind of like this cool version of chess during the fight stuff because you're able to like kind of move your guys around. Okay, I'm gonna fireball that guy, and I'm gonna do this to that guy. I'm gonna do this to that guy. And
And then you just watch while that happens.
so, well, yeah, you each time, you move from character to character, so you don't set it all up and then do it. But it does
Right.
require a certain amount of thinking through. But it also does have some very, very cool story elements and it's got this one version of the game where you can play as the Dark Urge, which is as a very, very evil character. And so like, and you can do some pretty awful. You can literally tear the wings off of a bird during one right after you talk to it, you're like, oh, okay, well, so
Yeah, there's talking animals. I think I saw some YouTube footage of a talking cat.
oh yeah, yeah, there's a few of them actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, that's it. No, I've heard nothing but good things and critical raves about it.
It's a
But like
fantastic.
one of those sort of top-down
Mhm.
turn-based things, just it seems very 80s to me.
It's not neat, like because I don't enjoy those kinds of games in general. Like I've tried to play the original ones and other stuff, and in general, I don't enjoy them. The plots, the characters, or you actually like the characters,
Huh,
like
okay.
they have personalities and they have enough to like they to talk about like while they're going from place to place. They actually like feels like they're interacting with each other and stuff like that. The God of War ones that just came out, for PC are both also really good as far as character development goes.
I've heard good things from them too, about them. Heard bad things about Starfield, which is a shame.
It didn't hold me. It just didn't. I tend to not enjoy science fiction games as much. Like it's just very rare. My buddy Nathan loved it. He did the entire, played the entire through the entire thing.
Hmm.
But yeah. And Kingdom Come 2, I think I've been really enjoying, even though it's a really like by all rights, I just shouldn't enjoy it because it's very
How do you find time to play all these games and at the same time like put out 5 albums in as many weeks? Like, I do not understand.
because I will keep this right next to me while I am working, and if I don't have like all I do is work, so I get up and eat, and then I go into whichever studio makes sense, and that's what I do. So like I have to actually manufacture time to not do that. So I kind of like my medication, I flow with the medication. So like when the medication is really in my system, I'm doing good. And I do the work, and as it starts to come down, I'll pick up the game and play for a while. I used to have a good system where I would work until I got really tired of it, and I'd play a game until I felt like an asshole for not getting enough work done, and then go back to working until I got tired and couldn't actually function very well, and I get in bed and play a game and go to sleep. Um, but for me, so I'm always looking for the thing that is so good that I'm not thinking about the song I should be writing or the other thing I should be doing. Like it's that engaging. And Baldur's Gate was very much one of those for me. Um, and it's always very exciting because, I I don't have, like you have people with contracts saying you need to do this thing. I don't. So for the most part, everything I do is on spec. So it's like, well, I'm going to write this record and put it out, and however it happens, it happens. I'm going to do this art and put it out, and people will buy it or they won't. But there's nobody like, we need to have this done. So when I do find something that can really, I feel like I am getting enough out of it enough enjoyment out of it that like I can really it'll be I allow myself to not work for. So it's always very exciting to me to when I have those things. And also when I go on tour, like I'll sit in the band and play for hours.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh
Um,
well. I'm sure your audience does not want to hear about this shit.
well, again, it's all stuff we're passionate about, but we'll wrap. You've got guests, and I don't want to take
Yeah,
you.
I should probably wind it up.
So, before I'll put these out in a few weeks or a month or something, and before I do that, I'm going to drop everybody a line and say, is there anything happening right now that you want to let people know about? But in general, they can find you at rifters.com.
They can.
And
Blog that I haven't actually posted to for over a month now. I used to blog a lot, but now I don't so much because I've got not very much important to say.
Right on.
I'm not on social media for the same reason. Also, social media is a cesspit.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I'm just here. You could always come by and like knock on the door and take me out for a beer too if you happen to be in Toronto.
There you go.
Yeah,
Or book a show specifically in Toronto to make sure he can come out.
you absolutely should do that.
I,
We had a blast
I,
last time you were here.
I hope to. The beginning part of the year is all ego stuff, and we're kind of getting all that figured out now. But
Are you guys like making progress on, have you sort of, has ego clicked?
yes and no. I mean, it's really like I've got a bunch of stuff written, so it's never really up to me. It's just finding the thing. So, it will happen when it happens. But I'm
Yeah.
glad to get back out on the road, and that's always just from a maintaining functioning standpoint. That's good. And I'm reworking old stuff. So, but
Okay.
in the
Well,
fall,
yeah, you've always got a place to crash when you're up here.
thank you. Yeah, and in the fall, new Stoneburner stuff comes out, and that could be a whole big thing. So we'll see. There's a lot of excitement about that. So, but thank you.
Awesome.
Give our best to the bug, and
Absolutely.
yeah. So thank you, and.
itself is an act of war against intelligent opponents. What does that say about a racer's machines travel between the stars?